What's up, Hoop Reporters? And before we get into this episode, I did want to touch on something that I forgot to talk about on the episode. When I preview all the conference games, I purposely left out the KCAC. They will have a separate kind of take with it again with our partnership with the KCAC. Going to give a little bit more of a deep dive into their conference games this weekend, as well as on social media, and you guys will see that when it's posted later this weekend. But I did want to kind of put that out there, put that into the ether, just so everybody don't start commenting, don't start saying, oh, you forgot about the KCAC. No, we do not forget about the KCAC. We do know that they have a lot of games lined up on Saturday as well, along with all the other conferences that we do mention. But I definitely just want to talk about that real quick before we get into the video. With that being said, though, hope you guys enjoy this episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch y'all in the next one. It's your boy Manny here. Welcome to another edition of Hoop Report, NAIA Women's Basketball Podcast, episode 23. Got a nice one for you guys lined up here as we react to the first top 25 of the new season that just dropped today. We're recording this on Wednesday. We'll also touch on the AAC scoreboard that was posted by the conference after they finished their first round of conference games. And we'll also preview the weekend that is with a loaded slate of a lot of conference games. We'll touch on every conference that is going to be in competition this weekend. Quick takes, more so just kind of picking who I believe is going to win. Not all of them, but most of them. Again, just trying, with it being a fresh season and these games, a lot of teams just haven't had the same time under their belt. A lot of games have been played for certain teams. Other teams have not played a lot of games. So just kind of don't really want to deep dive into it because there's not a lot to deep dive into. Level of competition is a lot different, all that kind of stuff. But I do think once we get into spring, when things are a little bit more solidified and easier to get into, we'll definitely be able to do that. And of course, like I said, we're going to talk about the top 25 that dropped today and a lot of things that I called, a lot of things that I didn't see coming, a lot of things that were kind of in the middle. So I'm excited to do that. We're actually going to start with the conference games, and we'll start with the AAC, kind of give my quick takes, pull up the scoreboard right here for you guys. So from the AAC, Pikeville absolutely dominates against Bluefield. They deserve a round of applause for that one, 122-39. Nothing to really talk about there. Biggest upset for me, biggest game of the day. Columbia beats Spartanburg Methodist in overtime, 77-76. Congratulations to Columbia on a big win for sure. Montreat beats Union by 7, 81-74. Milligan handles Bernal, 87-55. Tennessee Wesleyan takes a big one over falls to Reinhardt, 79-62. Reinhardt gets the win there. Reinhardt, a sneaky team in the AAC. Definitely want to keep an eye on them. And then Truett McConnell is unable to battle against Bryan, 95-41. Kind of a chalk day aside from, I think, that Columbia Spartan Methodist game. If I remember correctly, I looked back at my notes here from last episode when I did preview the AAC games. And like I said, I'll always be upfront about what I felt and who I think was going to win these games. Once I find the notes, I will tell you guys exactly who I had, but I do not believe that I had Columbia winning that game. I'm pretty sure I had Spartan Methodist coming out on top with that one. Here it is. Actually did have Columbia in that one. So, hey, shout out to me in case anybody's right there. Had Columbia on that one, Columbia by 5. So I was able to come out with that one on the upset watch. Like I said, I had Pikeville by 8. They proved me extra right. I had Milligan by 15, proved me right there. I had Union in a dogfight. Montreat was able to come out with the victory, obviously, in that one. In a close one, it was a dogfight for sure. Truett McConnell and Bryan. I had Truett McConnell. Bryan shut me up on that one, not even going to lie to you. And in Tennessee, Wesleyan, Reinhardt, I had it as a toss-up. Ended up being, obviously, Reinhardt with the convincing win, in my opinion. On the other conferences, I haven't seen their stuff yet, so not really going to touch too much on those from right now. But great start to the season for a lot of these teams. The AAC, I think the AAC is going to be one of the more interesting races. When you've got obviously your Pikevilles and Milligans and Johnsons of the world, but you've also got some tough teams in there, like a crappy Columbia team, a Montreat, a Union, whatever the case may be. So I'm very excited to see what the AAC is going to pull out of their hat this year. Heading over to Thursday, the only conference game that will be played today is going to be Montana State Northern versus Providence. I had Providence by 20 in that one. So that's going to be my take for that game. And now we head over to the weekend and what is to come when we talk about these conference games. Loaded Saturday. pretty much basketball all day, every day. We love those days, right? We've got the Frontier, the AAC, the Heart of America, the CCAC, the Sun, the GPAC, and the SAC all playing on Saturday. Pick your poison. I don't even pick your poison. Pick your game that you want to watch. Which game you want to watch. It's going to be a loaded day. We'll start on the Frontier. We touched on the Montana State Northern versus Receiving Boats Providence. Carroll versus Rocky. I'm here for it. I think it's going to be a great game. Number 14 versus number 17. As the news polls have come out, I'm going to go with Rocky Mountain in the upset. I think that team is, I'm a little more high on the Bears in this one. Not by much. I think it's going to be a close game for sure, but I do have Rocky Mountain taking the victory over Carroll. Dakota State, Bellevue on Saturday. Got Dakota State in that one. I know they came off of a tough loss, controversial loss, some might even say, against Dort. But at the end of the day, I do have Dakota State coming out with that one, probably in a double-digit victory for the Trojans. Heading back over to the AAC, Columbia and Bluefield. I got Columbia. Big win, obviously, against Spartanburg Methodist. I think they roll right into this next one against Bluefield and should be the favorites. Columbia International, Pikeville. I've got Pikeville in probably a dominant win there. Johnson and Drew McConnell. Give me Johnson. Tennessee Wesleyan, Spartan Methodist. Two teams coming off losses, obviously, in their respective games in the AAC. I think Methodist needs this one, so I'm going to go Methodist, but wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee Wesleyan comes out with that one. And then Bryan versus Union. Give me Union. I know Bryan came off a great win, obviously, in a blowout fashion, but I'm going with Union. I think Union kind of impressed me a little bit with that win over Montreat. So I'm going to go Union in that one to wrap up my AAC picks. Heading over now to the Heart, Clark versus Missouri Baptist. Missouri Baptist, a new member into the Heart of America. Clark, I think, welcomes in with the loss, though, so I'm going to go Clark Pride on that one. Mount Mercy versus Baker. Give me Baker in that one. I think Baker has the better team this year. I think they're going to be a really good team in the Heart of America overall, and I think they start that off this Saturday with a win. Culver Stockton versus Receiving Boats Grandview. Give me Grandview in that one. Maybe a closer one than people might think, but I'll still go Grandview. Missouri Valley and Graceland. Whew. What a way to start your season. I saw probably the comment that I loved the most was, imagine giving up 91 and you still win by 81. Crazy stat line. Crazy. It is a round of applause, absolutely, for that one. But for that reason, I'm going to go Graceland coming off. Now, I will say, for those of you who've been around long enough and you know this, and for those who are new to basketball, we tend to come back down to earth. So I'm not going to say that. I think it might be a scrappier game just because of that fact. When you shoot that well, when you score that many points, you're going to come back to the mean. Basketball is a game of averages a lot of times. And if you're averaging a very high number of shooting, of points, steals, whatever it is, you're eventually going to have to even it back out and get back, have maybe a little bit of a slump, maybe just one game. And again, when I say they come back down to earth, they could still put up 100. But I do think it's not going to be anything crazy like it was last game for Graceland. But I do have Graceland coming out that one. Do think it's a little bit closer than people might think. William Penn, Benedictine. Give me Benedictine in that one. And then number 12, Mid-American Nazarene versus Central Methodist. Give me number 12, Mid-American Nazarene, rolling after the new polls have come out. Chicagoland, Holy Cross, St. Xavier. Got St. Xavier in that one. St. Ambrose, IU South Bend. Give me South Bend. And St. Francis versus Governor. Be a good one. Going to be a good one. Give me Governor State. Governor State in a tight game there between top 25 level teams. In the Sun, not going to pick anybody in the Sun for obvious reasons. I will kind of break down the games, though, with me having a great feel for this one. Southeastern versus Florida Memorial, Receiving Boats battle. I think this is a very big game just in terms of national standing. Both teams, they're on separate ends of the spectrum. Obviously, Southeastern's 5-0 right now. Florida Memorial's only really had two games. One was an exhibition game against FAU, and the other game was obviously a win against University of Fort Lauderdale. So two different teams in terms of what they have going into this game, but still two of the best teams in the Sun. I'm very excited to see that one and kind of see the outcome of that one. Obviously, we'll be playing at the same time. Warner Coastal, I do think Coastal is the favorite in this one, just from a standpoint from last year, where we're going into this year, and obviously from the coaches preseason poll, among other things. But I do think Warner's going to give Coastal a very good fight in this one. Weber Ave, very interested in that one just from a scrappy standpoint. I think it's going to be a great physical matchup between these two teams. Obviously, Ave, a new coach there. Weber, one of the more veteran coaches, and I think the longest tenured coach now in the Sun at Weber for Coach Grady. So very excited to see from that one. And then obviously ourselves against Kaiser. Very excited to play against Coach Strickland in his first Sun Conference matchup. Kaiser's doing very well. They had a great win against Ryan Hart to start the season. They're 3-1 right now. Last game was a loss to Life, so they're coming up with a little bit chip on their shoulder. great executing team. They execute to a T. They're very good in their sets, able to make you pay if you fall asleep, whether it's certain actions throughout the game, something like that. So I'm very excited for them and for us, obviously coming off of a loss against Thomas and a nail-biting win on the road, a nail-biting game on the road after back-to-back between Thomas and Bruton Parker in our Georgia trip. Very excited to try and get back at it and get back into a great setting, great statement in a big game in the sun for sure. Heading over now to the GPAC, Northwestern and Don. Give me Northwestern. Dakota Wesleyan, number 16, number 25, Hastings. My basketball brain is going with Dakota Wesleyan. That's my pick. However, and I'm just going to throw this out into the ether, do with it what you will. Hastings needs this game way more than Dakota Wesleyan does. Now, I'm not saying that Dakota Wesleyan doesn't need this game. They do. Like this is a game that when the next polls come out, I know we haven't talked about these polls, but when the next polls come out, I'm going to look back at this one because a Hastings win drops Dakota Wesleyan and then raises Hastings, obviously. A Dakota Wesleyan win, I think, actually drops Hastings out of the top 25. I think it's the start of that eventual outcome when the next polls come out. It's my opinion. Again, it does hurt that Hastings dropped that game to Friends in double overtime at Friends. So I think this game is very important for the future top 25 aspirations of both of these teams. I am going Dakota Wesleyan. We will see if that does come to fruition. Receiving votes, Morningside versus Midland. I like Midland. I think they're a very underrated team in the GPAC, but I'm going to go Morningside in this one. Number 9, Briar Cliff versus College of St. Mary. I'm going Briar Cliff in a dominant win there. Waldorf versus number 11, Concordia. You heard me right. Step up, Bulldogs. I love to hear it. Love to see it. Shout out to the committee for not being scared of doing something new and shaking things up. I am going number 11, Concordia in that one over Waldorf. And then the last conference game on Saturday will be Oklahoma City versus Southwestern Christian. Give me the Stars in that one. Gone through all our conference previews. Like I said, it was going to be a really quick thing. Nothing too in-depth just because I don't think there's enough to do that from a totality standpoint. As we get into it and as Naive and Lex and I kind of are able to talk more about these games, maybe, who knows, maybe at the end of this like week to 2 weeks, week and a half of conference games, we'll kind of revisit it of like, oh, who we liked, what big games, stuff like that. But for right now, just because not a lot of teams have played, they haven't played, what's what I'm looking for? They haven't played not competitive, but elite, I guess, or valued games, so to speak. Just because, again, some teams haven't played that many games. And technically, Pikeville, for example, only has 2 games on their record right now because of all of those exhibitions games that they had. So it's just kind of too much unknown, so to speak. So I'm not going to really touch on things too much. The main part of this episode was going to be the top 25 and the reactions to that because there was a lot of things that we can react to in this one. So we'll get right into it. So top 25 came out this day on Wednesday, and things are looking very, very interesting. I'm going to get through my notes here. Going to go through all of it. Going to go through the predictions that I had. Going to go through what I feel was warranted, what I feel kind of shook me, all that kind of stuff. So for those who haven't seen it, top 25 came out, and this was the order. Numbers 1, 2, and 3 unchanged. Dort, Bethel, Campbellsville. Then we had Marion moving up one spot to number 4, Dakota State, Freed Hardeman, Lewis and Clark, St. Francis, Briar Cliff, Langston, finished rounding out your top 10. Then number 11, Concordia, like I just mentioned. Number 12, Mid-America, Nazarene. 13, Indiana Wesleyan. 14, 15, 16 in order, Carroll, Oregon Tech, Dakota Wesleyan. Rocky Mountain, number 17, St. Francis, number 18 of Illinois. Cumberland's of Kentucky, 19, Rio Grande, 20, Montana Tech, 21, Loyola, Indiana Tech, Lindsey Wilson, and Hastings round out the 22 through 25. And then we'll talk about receiving votes in a minute here. Going strictly off top 25, I'm going to read off of my notes from the last episode when I predicted some of these things, right? See which one I was right, which one I was wrong about, and then talk a little bit about it. So first one's up. Top 25 stays the same. Called it, and it happened. The top 25 stayed the same, and things did not change from that standpoint. Things kept just kind of rolling. They rolled from the top 25. I did say that the Dakota State and Dort game might change things a little bit. Now, when I say it changed things a little bit, what I mean is if the committee predicted something. Now, obviously, I think the committee predicted Dort would win that game, and they obviously did. But what I meant was if they expected it to be a blowout, not to be a blowout, whatever the case may be. I do think that they predicted it maybe being not as close as it ended up. They did not think it was going to be that close. So maybe that's why they put Marion at 4 and Dakota State at 5. But again, I knew that order would be the same no matter what. Got that one right. Not really a hard thing to do there when we talk about some of the best teams in the country. Now, when we talk about the next part of my predictions, it was Freed-Hardeman, Lewis and Clark State, St. Francis, Indiana, any order. That was what my prediction was. It stayed the exact same order. Freed-Hardeman, Lewis and Clark, St. Francis. Nothing crazy there. I had Dakota Wesleyan falling out of the top 10. They did fall out of the top 10. They went all the way to 16. Did I think it was going to be that far of a drop? No, they were number 9, obviously, but it is what it is. Now, Indiana Wesleyan. This one, I actually did not have. I truly believe that the committee predicted Indiana Tech to win that game. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think that's what ended up happening. And the reason I say this is because them dropping 3 spots it's not crazy, but it is interesting because the way I see it, and yes, they lost 2 games to number 2, number 3 in the country that are still number 2, number 3 in the country. So, and that's why I say they had to have predicted that Indiana Tech was going to win that game, because if you predict that to happen, the drops make a little more sense. You can't necessarily punish a team for losing the 2 of the top 3 teams in the country. Yes, a little bit. That's why I said staying in the same spot. I just didn't think they were going to fall out of the top 10 that much. And with everything else happening around them, I thought they kind of got sneak under the committee. I was wrong, obviously. They dropped all the way to 13. Again, not a crazy drop, and it's still within the realm of possibility, and I understand it. But I do think part of that was baked into expecting Indiana Tech to win that game, which obviously they did do in a great game between those 2 teams. So definitely had that one wrong. Langston, I had staying at 11 to 13. Actually moved into the top 10. So congratulations to the Lions on that one. So definitely a round of applause for the Lions on that one. I understood, and it wasn't that I sold them short. I just didn't know if the committee was going to get them moving up, and they did. So congratulations to them. Obviously, the big one that I didn't have, Concordia being number 11. Round of applause for the Bulldogs. Completely stepped under my radar on that one. To go from unranked to number 11 is definitely the biggest leap in these top 25s. Well, they say there, I'm all for it. I'm here for it. You've now gained the attention of the committee and of the nation. What are you going to do with it? And that's heading into conference play, which I haven't looked too far into them. Obviously, they've got Waldorf coming up here. It should be a win for them. So you're setting yourself up to be within the top 15 going into the back end of non-conference play in the winter. Who knows? Concordia might be flirting with that top 10 by the time we get into the GPAC. And we'll see the GPAC being a conference that does have some top 25 teams in there. You pick up a win or 2. Concordia ain't to be messing around this year. So y'all better keep an eye on them Bulldogs, because the Bulldogs are coming with some fight. They want all that smoke right now. Next thing on my notes from the last episode, Hastings drops below 15. Called that one. They dropped all the way to 25. So definitely a bit of a nosedive there from, I believe, number 12 it was. Yeah, they were number 12. So over half their the drop there. Tough one, but again, understandable. Again, you're 2-2, lost to unranked Sterling and receiving votes Friends. Even if there was a tough Friends game, it still doesn't matter. You gotta win that one. Especially after dropping that Sterling one. I think the Sterling one already had you out of the top 15, and losing to Friends just kind of hurt that even more and got you to number 25. At least you're still in the top 25 though. Mid-American Nazarene was the next one. I had them moving up into the top 10 or 11. They went to 12. I may have overshot it a little bit, but I was really high on them. And to be honest with you, Concordia jumping them, I think, is what kept them at number 12. They would have probably been 11 had Concordia not made the run they had made in the early part of the season. I had Oregon Tech staying or moving up 1 to 2 spots. They are number 15. I believe they actually dropped, if I'm not mistaken here. Oregon Tech was number 14. So they did drop by 1. So it kind of was wrong on that one. Understand it though. Understand it. It kind of, again, there's a lot of other teams that had really good regular seasons, starts of regular seasons. So I understand why Oregon Tech kind of lost 1 spot, and Carroll took that spot from them. So then Oregon drops closer to number 20. They dropped all the way out of the top 25. Was I surprised by it? Kind of. I understand getting upset by receiving votes and unranked receiving votes Montana Tech and unranked Montana Western. I think they definitely put more stock into that Montana Western game than anything else. And when you were already in the middle of the teens, when you were number 15, you were close to the edge. You had some teams that, again, had really good starts to their season. I can definitely see you falling out of the top 25 into the receiving votes picture. So definitely a tough break for the Southern Oregon team. Carroll was number 14 here. I know I've been kind of jumping around, trying to stick between my notes and what happened. And Carroll was up next. Carroll stays within the same range. That range was, of course, in number 16 up to number 14. I think that's pretty safe. That's a two spot range. I think that's kind of on par with what I thought they would get. Then we look over at next thing on my notes. Indiana Tech moves closer to the top 20 because of the loss to Huntington. Again, that game for Iowa against Iowa does not count. At least I don't believe it to count for this game from what I've talked to with some coaches and some of the Raiders throughout the committee. I had them moving closer to the top 20. They actually went outside of the top 20 and are now top 25, number 23. And this is where, back to my point earlier about them predicting Iowa to lose their game to Indiana Tech. If you're predicting them to lose, why did you bring Indiana Tech down so far? I understand they lost to Huntington. Like, I get that. I do. And Huntington did lose a lot of games to receiving votes to top 25 teams already. And again, who plays who, I get that part of it. But number 23 from number 17, like, I would have been okay with number 20. I really would have. And looking at the teams above them, Loyola, I get. Montana Tech, I get. Rio Grande, I get. Cumberland, St. Francis, Rocky Mountain. Like, I get a lot of these teams. Maybe I could see a debate for number 21. I think 21 would have been a little bit better. I really do, because I get Montana Tech and Loyola made that jump from receiving votes into the top 25. I had them both coming into that top 25. And in that range, I do think Indiana Tech, that Huntington loss just hurt them. I think it hurt them more than the win against Iowa could have helped. Now, I do think the committee, if they were predicting Iowa to lose that game and Indiana Tech to win, they probably predicted what it ended up being, which was a close one all the way through. And granted, Indiana Tech, it was almost wire to wire, never trailed aside from the beginning of the first and the midway through the fourth. And again, a great game. I was so glad I was able to catch that game live. But I am a little surprised at 23, but I do think it was more of like people around them than necessarily Indiana Tech. And again, that Iowa win probably saved them from being 25 or even outside, maybe. I think that was a complete possibility, judging by how everything shook out. Next thing, Arizona Christian falls out of the top 25. Called that one. They're not even in the receiving votes picture. Understandable. 0-4 start and through losses to unranked opponents. Can't expect to be in the receiving votes or top 25 picture with that resume so far. St. Francis, Illinois stays, but probably moves up due to other upsets. Called that one. St. Francis was number 19. They are now number 18. Again, not a big jump, but with everything else happening around them, I think that's why they benefited from one spot. And one spot can be the difference when it's all said and done. So I definitely do not want to kind of just brush by that like it's not something big. LSU Shreveport stays outside the top 20, but in the top 25. Got that one wrong. They dropped down all the way to receiving votes. I do understand it. They're number 2 in the receiving votes picture, and we'll talk about the receiving votes teams in a minute once we're done with top 25. I understand it. I'm not surprised by it. I think my prediction was a little more lenient for sure. So I'm not really gonna be shocked about that one. Shawnee State outside the top 25. Called that one. You have an upset loss to unranked Wibbler Forest, 79-50 in a blowout fashion, in my opinion, especially when we're talking about unranked and ranked opponents. They're hanging on by a thread. They are receiving votes, the last team to be receiving votes. So we'll see what they can do. They definitely have a chance in the River States Conference to make some noise, and especially in their non-conference part of their schedule that's left in the spring or in the winter. Briar Cliff, I called it. I called it. Yes, I did not call. And again, Concordia made the biggest jump. When you go from unranked to number 11, not top 25, not top 20, not just top 15. And honestly, I'm giving you top 10 because you're number 11. At that point, you're right there, especially for a team that was unranked. That's a heck of a jump. Heck of a jump. Again, shout out to the committee for not being scared of doing that. But I did say that Briar Cliff was this year's Marion team from last season. And what I mean by that was, for those who didn't see that in the episode, Marion last year, coming into the season, was the former #1 overall seed in the NAIA tournament. You get a new coach, get it. Coach that was there, by the way. She was already there. I'm blanking on coach's name, and I apologize for that. She was already there. Just got promoted. You go to the receiving votes. You still have Abby McNeely. You still had all these players there. But you're receiving votes. Shocked, for sure. Next polls, number 19, I think it was, somewhere in there. It wasn't that high. I still think should have been higher, but you're number 19 now. This is the same Marion team that's now number 4 in the country, for the record. And I said Briar Cliff is that team this year. You get a new coach, promotion from in-house. You start the season number 20. And again, 20 is not bad. Better than Marion started last year. But I still think that's way too low. I would have given them, just off name alone, 15 minimum. Talking about the Chargers here. We're talking about one of the best teams in the country, in one of the best conferences in the country. I'm glad they're number 20. I should have picked them to have the highest jump, and it just made sense even when I laid it out, and I just didn't do it for whatever reason. But they should have been the highest jump team, and they were. From number 20, number 9, all warranted. All of it warranted. So I'm not surprised at all about that one. Next one up on my notes. Had Briar Cliff, LSU Shreveport, Shawnee State. Lindsey Wilson had a chance at number 15. Maybe that's a little bit of a high bar, but it was. I do think the unranked loss to GGC hurt them. I capped them at 17-18. They ended up coming in at 24. They did not move. Was I shocked by that? Maybe a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I could see them. I definitely thought they could move up. Maybe one spot at least. And who knows? Maybe if they don't lose the GGC one, maybe they take 23 over Indiana Tech. I could have seen that. But I do think Montana Tech and Loyola getting their respective wins, and Rio Grande getting their respective wins, stuff like that. And Cumberland's doing what they need to do. Now, the Cumberland's kind of like Briar Cliff, just on a smaller scale, where I think they gave them top 25 because, number 25, because you're losing 2 of the best players in the country. Kind of a, let's see what you have now. They got it. They got it for sure. So I do say I'm understandably shocked by Lindsey Wilson still being there, and just kind of the fan in me. In a vacuum, they definitely should have moved up, but we don't do this in a vacuum, obviously. So I get it. Last one, Cumberland could move up the most spots. Had them moving up 10 spots, number 15. Like, I thought they could move up 10 spots. They moved up to number 19, which still top 20, which I think that was the bar. They should have at least been top 20. And I understand why not moving up any higher, because the teams above them definitely had some better wins in terms of quality of opponents. And that was what I was looking for earlier when I was saying some of these games, some of these teams, when we're talking about conference, they just don't have the quality competition that I would like to have to be able to try and predict some of these conference games. But yeah, so like that kind of wraps up. I think my first time doing this, I don't think it was anything crazy. I think it was a fair shakedown between what I had right, what I had wrong, where I fall in the middle. So I'm not too mad at it for the first time around. Probably won't happen again. Next time I'll probably be completely incorrect, because there'll be more things that I can overanalyze and overthink about and stuff like that. So, but for the first time, I'm not too upset about it. Now we're going to head over to the receiving votes side of things, trying to make this one a little bit quicker. Not too much crazy things happen in this one. When we look at it, Loyola, Montana Tech, Friends getting top 25 nod. Then I rephrased that one to say Loyola and Montana Tech for sure. They obviously did. I had Loyola 22-25. They fall in number 22. And then I had Montana Tech top 20. Just missed out on that one, the number 21. And then I had Friends. If they got in, it was 25. So they were like the last team that I would, out of those 3, to give the nod to. And they obviously did not make it. They're still receiving votes. Kind of a little bit lower than I thought they would be, in my opinion. Providence and Columbia next up. Still receiving votes. Didn't think they could have enough to get in the top 25, but I knew they'd still be in the receiving votes picture with their wins. Huntington in their own tier. That Indiana Tech game definitely saved them from being in the top, from being outside the receiving votes picture, and they stayed right smack dab, pretty much where they were for the most part in the previous one. Governor State, Rio Grande, Georgetown, Southeastern, William Carey, Morningside, all undefeated, but did not have a top 25 receiving votes opponent yet. So the quality some quality unranked opponents, but nothing crazy, and that's why they're still in the receiving vote side of things. William Carey is a little bit lower than I thought they would be. Same thing with Morningside, but again, not too much movement because some of these other teams in the receiving votes picture did have some really good starts. Florida Memorial, Xavier stay or fall back a little bit. Florida Memorial stayed. Xavier did drop back a little bit. Again, receiving votes, not too much numbers, but I mean, you have numbers of votes from the committee. So that's why I say drop back where they probably have less votes. Pikeville, Evangel, Mid-American Christian stay in the receiving votes picture or small drop. I was right on one of those three. Evangel still in it. Pikeville and Mid-American Christian fall out. Should have seen that one coming, honestly, especially for the Pikeville. Only have one game, you lose it just by record and stuff. I kind of understand it, especially when we're talking about receiving votes games. I just didn't know how they would kind of go about that one. The Mid-American Christian one, 3-1. Only loss was to Friends. And again, with Friends having such a big win, I could understand them kind of just sneaking in at the bottom. But again, the community had to bench somebody, and they went with Mid-American Christian. I do think they will probably be able to get back into at least the receiving votes picture for sure. Grandview, Milligan, William Baptist, Hope could drop after 3-3 start. Grandview, I do think being at 3-3 and 2 losses, still receiving votes on the back end, but still receiving votes, a little bit of a surprise. But because they did, when you look at it, even though they have the most losses out of the 3 teams, they're 3-3. Milligan was 1-2. William Baptist, only 1 loss in the season for both, but to an unranked team. It makes sense because they had better quality games. The 2 of the 3 losses were to number 20 Briarcliff at the time, number 9, and the number 1 Dork. You get that. Again, like I said, Milligan, William Baptist, and Hope, they had losses against top 25 teams or unranked opponents. It's going to hurt the resume in that aspect, so I can kind of see why those 3 teams dropped out. And again, Hope and William Baptist, I want to say. I know Hope for sure. They were on the back end of it, so I could definitely see that one. College of Idaho, Olivet Nazarene were in danger of dropping out. They dropped out completely. Both teams with 2 losses, and for Olivet Nazarene, 2 unranked losses, both on the road. And then for College of Idaho, receiving votes Montana Tech and unranked Montana Western. Kind of a safe bet there. I don't think that was anything crazy of a hot take. Wayland Baptist, LSUA, drop out of receiving votes. They did just that. New teams. I did have GGC in there. Probably was a little bit of an emotional pick, but can you blame me? I just love a good story. Y'all know me. And Cumberland, Tennessee did call that one. They come in at the third to last team to get a receiving votes next to their name. No other new teams in the receiving votes picture except for Corbin. Corbin kind of surprising some people, getting in safely in the receiving votes picture. So definitely want to give them their love on that one. But that's going to do it for this episode. I appreciate you guys for tuning into this one. Like I said, a lot of kind of chalk level stuff when we talk about the top 25 this time around. Could change by the next 2 weeks. Obviously, a lot of these conference games are going to shift some of these some of these polls and stuff like that. And as far as those conference games, loaded Saturday, where we're getting a preview of what's to come in the spring. So get your popcorn ready, lock in college day all day, whether it's with a friend, with a family, you're going to the games, whatever the case may be. Make sure you tune in and take in what's going to be some great conference games from all these great conferences, the AAC, the Frontier, the Chicagoland, the Heart of America, GPAC, whatever it is. We'll try our best to cover as many games as we can. Obviously, not going to get to every single one, but we'll try and pick the ones that we feel definitely does need or deserve that coverage. But with that being said, I will catch you guys in the next one.